It's time to talk about some football. If you're looking for all the latest pro football news in action, you've come to the right place. I'm John Kuzma, and this is the Football Game Tonight podcast. On the ticker today, we're going to talk about the Texans running backs. So we're going to talk a little bit about Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon. We're going to do the Devontae Adams story. He's now with the Rams. We'll talk about Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp going to the Seahawks. We got the Justin Fields story with the Jets, and then we'll cap it off with the Chiefs outlook. We'll see what's next for the Chiefs after that tough go they had in the Super Bowl, getting blown out by the Eagles. So let's start with the Texans, the headliner for today's show. So the Texans have perhaps one of the best running back tandems in the whole entire NFL. And when you look at the two players they have at the running back position, Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb, two really good football players, it's frightening how good these two running backs can be because their downhill running style is going to translate to success for the Texans just because these guys are different types of running backs when it comes to their physicality. You know, Joe Mixon was so good last year for the Texans, really, took his opportunity and ran with it. He was going from the Bengals to the Texans, trying to, figure things out with, the Texans after all those years with the Bengals. He, really does a great job for that football team. He was running the ball hard, breaking tackles, just, doing everything that he had to do to chip in and, be a big factor for that offense. They have C.J. Stroud there, so to be able to hand the ball off to Joe Mixon and have a running back that can, make some big plays for that offense, that was such a relief for C.J. Stroud. And let's face it, the Texans have been a good team ever since C.J. Stroud got there. So by plugging Joe Mixon into the mix too, it just gave them another element for that offense. A guy that could carry the ball 20, 25 carries a game and really just, add a downhill running style. And now that they have Nick Chubb there too, it's pretty obvious that the Texans are going to ground and pound their way to success because you can't stop both these guys. I mean, Nick Chubb, sure, he's coming off an injury and still trying to, figure things out after that major injury, but he's back and he feels healthy now. So, Nick Chubb was a Cleveland Brown for all those years and was a really terrific football player. And I love this pickup by the Texans to be able to pick Nick Chubb up and add him to this football team, to team him up with Joe Mixon. That backfield there's no breathers for these opposing teams. You get done facing Joe Mixon, now you got to face Nick Chubb. I mean, the Texans are going to be rumbling when it comes time to run the football. So it's going to be so tough to stop those two running backs. I just don't know how you game plan for both of them. Sure, you're going to have to stack the box, put 8 people in the box, and try to take things away. Well, then, C.J. Stroud's going to have an opportunity to capitalize, because you're running a lot of one safety high if you're, focused on taking Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb out of the game. So it really creates some favorable matchups for the Texans by adding Nick Chubb because you have to go all in on stopping Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb. You have to sell out because if not, the Texans are just going to beat you by running the ball the whole entire game. So how these defensive coordinators are going to make adjustments to stop both these running backs, it goes back to what we talked about in some of those past episodes. I think teams are going to be outgunned. I think it's just going to be really tough to be able to stop these two running backs. Nick Chubb is, we've all seen those videos of him squatting so much weight where the bar is bending. The bar can barely hold that much weight, yet Nick Chubb is still squatting it. And, making it look easy compared to everybody else. So, and then, like I said, Joe Mixon is not a slouch either, a guy that was really good last year for this Texans team. So, in terms of downhill running style, in terms of physicality and strength, I think that's where this offensive backfield really flourishes. They're just so physical, so tough. And like I said, downhill, running right at you, lowering the shoulder, then putting the boom on linebackers to the point where it's like, you're going to see some of these defenses fold going against this Texans team. You're going to see them fold. You're going to see them not be able to handle the physicality of this Texans running back tandem. It's just too much. It's too much because Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb are off the charts when it comes to their strength. These guys are so physical that it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. I'll tell you that, just because you talk about linebackers taking big hits from these two running backs. How do you think a cornerback's gonna fare? How do you think a safety's gonna fare? There's some really bad matchups out there for the defense. Like a corner trying to tackle these guys, there's a good chance that corner's going to get hurt. A safety, good chance that safety's going to get hurt. It makes it really tough. Sure, maybe the defensive tackles and the defensive ends and a really strong linebacker, but even those smaller outside linebackers in a 4-3 defense, the 4-3 middle linebacker's bigger. He might have a shot at holding up against these guys, but those 4-3 outside linebackers typically are a little bit smaller and a little bit quicker. They might have their hands full trying to take these guys down too. So it's just a game where, like, you're seeing these bone-crunching hits being delivered by the offense. Usually we're used to seeing the defenses swarm to the football, get 11 helmets to the football, and deliver some bone-crunching hits. I think this Texans offense are going to lower their shoulder and put the boom on a lot of people. I think, Nick Chubb might honestly have a real shot at even starting. As good as Joe Mixon was last year, with just how good Nick Chubb is when he's at the top of his game. And if he really does make a full recovery and gets back up to full speed, it's like, how do you sit Nick Chubb? Nick Chubb is just on a different level, and you can see why he's that successful with how much he prepares to be great in the National Football League. He makes sure when he steps out onto the field, he's one of the most prepared players on the whole entire field. That's how much he's dedicated to perfecting his craft. So when he steps on the field, he expects to have success because he knows he's put in more time and effort than all the other guys that are on the field. So I don't know how it's going to pan out. Do they stick with Joe Mixon because he was there first and he was so good last year? Or do they say, hey, Nick Chubb is just too good to be sitting at the start of these games, and we're going to bring Joe Mixon into the game to spell Nick Chubb? That might be the Texans' game plan. I could see that happening. Either way, you really can't go wrong. Maybe they stick with Joe Mixon because he was there first, and they bring Nick Chubb off the bench to spell Joe Mixon. It's the other way around. But can you go wrong either way? I don't think so. I think it's just a really big pickup for the Texans to be able to bring Nick Chubb in. And now for CJ Stroud, it's like, hey, I know, we got something going with CJ Stroud, and, obviously with his arm talent and being able to drop back and pick apart these defenses, that's a big factor for this offense as well. But you have two really good running backs. The last thing you want to do is be a pass-heavy offense. You want to be a run-heavy offense because so much of the NFL is playing to your strengths. If you're a pass-heavy offense, that means you have two really good running backs that you're not utilizing. And if you're passing a lot, you only can probably use one running back, and he's not getting used enough. So you're just wasting the other good running back on the bench. So I just don't think the Texans are going to go that route. I think they're going to be a run-heavy offense that understands that one of their biggest strengths is going to be feeding these two guys and letting them chip away at the defenses. And, because in the second half, facing these two running backs, these defenses that they go against are going to slow down big time. You can't tell me they're not. They're going to slow down big time because it's going to just take so much effort and energy to keep up with Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb in the first half. So in the second half, you're going to see these defenses slow down. You're going to see people start to get banged up. You're going to see guys out of the lineup with injuries because that's how tough it is to tackle Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb. So to me, it's a no-brainer. You got to be a run-heavy offense if you're the Texans. You got to put it all on Mixon and Chubb's back and let these guys carry you to victory, so to say, because that's clearly the path to winning if you're the Texans. If you're the Texans, it's through the running game. It's play actioning off of these two great running backs because the play action is going to be there all day with teams already stacking the box and teams selling out to stop these two great running backs. The play action is going to be there. The play action bootleg is going to be there. And you're going to, off those play actions, you're going to find receivers running wide open downfield because, when you commit so much to stopping the run, windows start opening up, especially when you're so deceptive with that play action and guys are selling out. Now, when you get the play action off, there's just wide receivers running freely. You can kind of pick your poison wherever you want to go to because you got to focus so much on stopping the running backs. So, to me, I think the Texans are going to be good. I can see them being good. I can see them being right there in the hunt. And if they can, find a way to get the most out of Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb, we might see them be very dangerous in the playoffs too, because these guys can go against the best defenses in the league, which is what you see in the playoffs when the field feels like it gets smaller because there's no running lanes and there's no windows in the passing game because the defenses are so good. They swarm 11 helmets to the football. They get to their drops. Everybody knows their assignments. There's less blown assignments in the secondary. So to get, Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb going when it matters the most in the postseason against those top defenses in the league, that's when you'll really see things tilted in the Texans' favor because, if you can run the ball in the playoffs, like I said, when it feels like the field is getting smaller because the defenses are so good, now you got something that can counter those top defenses. Now, instead of fearing going against these great defenses are fearing going against the Texans because they know they have two outstanding running backs that they're gonna find daylight. They're gonna run to daylight and they're gonna create big plays for the offense. So I just don't see it going any other way for the Texans. There's just too much talent there in that offensive backfield. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up being the best running back tandem in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if they just set the whole league on fire this year to the point where it's like they're unstoppable, dominating week in and week out. Nobody can really stack up against them. It wouldn't be a surprise to me at all because I think the Texans running backs are going to be that damn good. Moving on, the Davante Adams story. So let's talk about Davante Adams last year. Goes from the Raiders, goes to the Jets, reunites with Aaron Rodgers, but things kind of don't work out with the Jets. They just couldn't, find their strides, and they couldn't capitalize on having Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. So Davante Adams moves on, and he goes to the Rams. I love this fit for Devontae Adams. I love it because I think Matthew Stafford is the perfect quarterback to be throwing to Devontae Adams. I think those two are going to be able to just dominate and put up huge numbers for the Rams offense. And I love that the Rams go out and get one of the most dynamic wide receivers in the National Football League to really give their offense another gear. I think they're going to be able to flip the switch and kind of take it to another level with Devontae Adams. Because to me, looking at Matthew Stafford and Devontae Adams, there's no way those two guys don't have success. Unless someone gets hurt, there's no way those two guys don't have success. It's just not going to happen because what does Matthew Stafford do well? It's his arm talent. His arm talent is off the charts. And not only his arm talent, he's got a cannon. His throw power is off the charts. So when you combine those two things, throw power off the charts, can throw the football a mile down the field, also has arm talent to, throw sidearms, to throw from any angle, the accuracy's there. When it comes to an arm, Matthew Stafford checks every single box. So for Devontae Adams, this is a chance to flourish. This is a chance for him to get back to being the Devontae Adams that's electric, a guy that is going to have to be doubled every single snap. And even if you do double him, he's going to find a way to get separation because that's what Devontae Adams does. So I think, we might see Devontae Adams really turn back the clock, if I'm being honest. We might see him turn back the clock and really be peak Devontae Adams where he's just running past everybody to the point where he's constantly getting over top. I don't know how it doesn't go that way because, like I said, Matthew Stafford is going to bring the best out of him. Remember when Odell Beckham Jr. joined the Rams and Matthew Stafford was just feeding Odell Beckham Jr. And really, Odell Beckham Jr. hasn't been that good ever since. He hasn't been the same player since he left the Rams. That was the last time we really saw Odell Beckham Jr. be the Odell Beckham Jr. that we used to see when he played for the Giants. It hasn't been that way since for OBJ. I think the same exact thing is going to happen with Devontae Adams. I think Devontae Adams, remember when Devontae Adams was with Green Bay and he was dominating with Aaron Rodgers. But then he goes to the Raiders and, that first year with the Raiders with Derek Carr, Devontae Adams was dominating there too because Derek Carr and Devontae Adams were teammates at Fresno State, broke all those records. They kind of picked up right where they left off. But then the Raiders sent Derek Carr packing and, Devontae Adams was never the same with the Raiders and was also frustrated that they sent Carr, his good friend from college, packing. So that's why he forced his way out of Las Vegas with the Raiders. He didn't want to be there anymore. Well, I think just because Matthew Stafford is that good, it's going to be peak Devontae Adams to the point where he might be Packers Devontae Adams, where he might be first-year Raiders with Derek Carr Devontae Adams. I think that's what we might see. He was starting to show flashes with the Jets where it's like, okay, it's still there because he's back with Aaron Rodgers, but it took time for him to go from the Raiders to the Jets, and he was getting his feet underneath him with the new team with the Jets. I think, having the offseason there with the Rams, getting all those reps in practice together, I think he hits the ground running with the Rams. I think him and Matthew Stafford end up being on the same page. I think they throw the football all over the place. Just all the throws, all the rhythm and timing, all the plays in the red zone, vertical, slants. You're going to see deep over top. You're going to see underneath stuff. It's going to be exciting. I'm going to tell you that. If I had to bet, how good Devontae Adams is going to be this year, I'm going to say exceptional. I think he could easily be a top 10 receiver in the league, and he might have a real shot at being top 5. I know some people are going to be like, with all the young receivers in the league, with what Mike Evans does every year, he's basically a lock for top 5. I mean, you're telling me Devontae Adams is going to, turn back the clock and get back to being top 10, top 5? I would say absolutely. No doubt in my mind, just because it's a match made in heaven. And getting these two guys together is a dream come true for the Rams. You can't tell me otherwise. I've been doing this football thing since I was a little kid. My family owned a semi-pro football team. I played my whole entire life. You can't tell me otherwise. There's these rare moments in football where the stars align. Getting Matthew Stafford and Devontae Adams together is the stars aligning in pro football. That's what it is. There's no other way to explain the situation. It's a little bit of magic. That's all it is. And you're going to see when game day gets here and Devontae Adams starts going for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and it's the most exciting brand of football, between quarterback and wide receiver that we've seen, or that we end up seeing this upcoming season, I should say. That's when you'll stop and be like, okay, John was right. And that's the way it's going to go, because these two guys are just too talented not for it to go that way. And you also have Sean McVay there, who is going to make sure that the right play is getting called. He's going to make sure that these guys are in the right position to succeed. He's going to exploit the weakness of each defense. So if it's a cover 2, they're going to throw right down the middle between both the safeties, or they're going to find a way to get over top the corner near the sidelines where the safety can't get over top and squeeze the play near the sidelines. It's those little things, knowing how to play the chess match, which Sean McVay knows how to do. Did I say Sean Payton earlier? I meant Sean McVay. I don't know if I said Sean Payton. I meant Sean McVay. But it's that little chess match that Sean McVay knows how to play. And that's what's going to, also tilt the odds in the Rams' favor. So I really am looking forward to seeing Devontae Adams put on that Rams uniform, be in that Sean McVay system, playing with Matthew Stafford. I think we're going to see some fireworks. To use the 4th of July reference, yesterday was 4th of July. I think we're going to see some fireworks in Los Angeles, and I think it's going to be in a very exciting brand of football. Let's move on. We have the Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp story. So Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp are both Seahawks. They both wound up with the Seahawks. Remember last year, Cooper Kupp was with the Rams, spent his whole entire career with the Rams, I believe. And now I think he's from Washington, Cooper Kupp. So he's going back home, a homecoming for him to go and play for the Seahawks. Sam Darnold was with the Vikings last year. They had a really good year. The Vikings were really good last year. Sam Darnold had some tough moments, particularly in that game against the Lions, division rival game to kind of take control of the division. Sam Darnold struggled against the Lions. Sam Darnold struggled in the playoffs a little bit. But Sam Darnold, as a whole, did do enough to earn this opportunity with the Seahawks to be their starting quarterback. Now, can Sam Darnold get over his rough patches that he had against elite competition? He failed to take control of the division against the Lions. He struggles, late in the year against elite competition when it's time to step up and take it to another level. Does he deserve the starting quarterback job for the Seahawks? I think when you look at the year the Vikings have, yes, he deserves to be a starter for the Seahawks. He's earned that. Now he has to iron out the wrinkles when it comes to those rough patches against elite competition. So with Sam Darnold, we have to see whether or not he plays his best football against the 49ers, against the Rams. Those games in this NFC West division where it really matters, because your quarterback in this NFC West, he matters so much when you're going against teams like the 49ers, teams like the Rams. You look at the 49ers offense with Kyle Shanahan, all the weapons they have. You look at Sean McVay and the Rams offense, Matthew Stafford, Devontae Adams, who we just talked about. Sam Darnold has to live up to the contract that the Seahawks just gave him, and he has to prove that he's worthy of being a starter that can help the Seahawks take control of this NFC West division. Because if he can't be at his very best, particularly in those two games against the 49ers and the Rams, then we already know how those games are going to go, because the Rams are better with Devontae Adams, with Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, and then the 49ers, we all know how good they are with Kyle Shanahan. But the Seahawks have talent. They do. They can make some plays happen. And if Sam Darnold can come in and kind of find a way to make this thing tick with the Seahawks, if he can find a way to bring out the best of Jackson Smith and Jigba and make the other guys, feel like they're included too and part of the offense, to where they know they're going to get the football and their number is going to be called, maybe Sam Darnold can go out there to the Seahawks and surprise some people. It's not out of the question. I mean, there's talent on that Seahawks team. But Sam Darnold will have to up his game. He's going to have to be better against elite competition. He's going to have to seize the moment, particularly against the 49ers and the Rams. Those are the games you have to circle on that calendar for the Seahawks, because if Sam Darnold is going to deliver the goods for the Seahawks, those are the games that he really has to be at his very best and find a way to take over. If he can surprise the 49ers, if he can surprise the Rams, that's when we'll see Sam Darnold prove that the Seahawks made the right decision by bringing him over from the Vikings and making a commitment to him. I think the Seahawks can beat the Cardinals. I have no doubt if they play their best football, they'll beat the Cardinals. It's the 49ers and Rams where you have to find a way to pull out a victory. That's life in the NFL. It's so competitive in this league that you just had to find a way to pull out a victory, whether that's running the football, passing the football, getting it done with a lights-out defense. It doesn't matter. Just find a way to win the game. If Sam Darnold can do that, it's going to be huge for this team. And he also has this weapon that just came in from the Rams to the Seahawks, Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's getting a little bit older, showed a little bit of signs of slowing down, especially at the very end there with the Rams, was not, putting up the big numbers that we're used to seeing from Cooper Kupp. Remember, at one point, this guy was one of the most dominant wide receivers in the National Football League, a guy that nobody could defend. He's got to find a way to get his footing back and make this homecoming special for the Seahawks team. If he can do that, if he can find a way to, turn back the clock, just like we need to see from Devontae Adams with the Rams, kind of a guy who replaced him with the Rams, because remember, Cooper Kupp left the Rams, went to the Seahawks, kind of a homecoming for him. The Rams kind of filled that hole with Devontae Adams, so the Seahawks really need Cooper Kupp to be the old Cooper Kupp, a guy that is so good with his route running, so good in and out of his breaks, to the point where it's just so hard to stay on his hip because he's so shifty. Those are the things that Cooper Kupp does really well. Sam Darnold is going to need that out of Cooper Kupp. And if Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp go into that game against the Rams, Cooper Kupp's former team, and Devontae Adams doesn't have his best game, but Cooper Kupp finds a way to light it up and really, cut into the Rams, his former team. That would go a long way in that game as well, which would also go a long way in this NFC West division. So that's a big game you got to circle for Cooper Kupp individually, going against his old team, a team that kind of said, hey, we're moving on from Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp doesn't like that as a competitor. He's like, hey, I gave you guys a lot of great years. We even won a Super Bowl, and you guys aren't, gonna find a way to stick with me and work things out. If I was Cooper Kupp, I would want to get the best of the Rams. I'll tell you that. And I would be upset about how things ended there. But, you go back to the state of Washington. You're playing for the Seahawks now. Going to be catching passes from Sam Darnold. We'll see if those two can be on the same page. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba, a guy who's really good. He's going to get the majority of passes from Sam Darnold. We'll see if Cooper Kupp can line up opposite of Jackson Smith and Jigba and provide some plays on the opposite side of the field. Remember, he's going to be trying to fill DK Metcalf's shoes. DK Metcalf had some great years there for the Seahawks, so some big shoes to fill for Cooper Kupp. We'll see if he's able to limit the loss of losing DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf younger than Cooper Kupp, so an older player trying to replace a younger player, always tough to do in the NFL. We know the NFL is a young man's game, so that's another thing we have to keep an eye on. How much can Cooper Kupp step in and kind of limit the loss of DK Metcalf for this Seahawks team? Moving on, we got the Justin Fields story. So Justin Fields is now on the Jets. And Justin Fields, starts his career with the Bears, ends up going to the Steelers, started off really good for the Steelers, and then eventually the Steelers decide to go with Russell Wilson. I don't know if that was a great move for the Steelers. Yeah, it started off really good with Russell Wilson and the Steelers, but by the end it had plateaued and that offense was stagnant. You almost wonder if Russell Wilson starting off hot when he took over for Justin Fields with the Steelers was just Justin Fields' momentum carrying over to Russell Wilson. Because once Russell Wilson got settled in, that offense just faded away, and there was nothing happening for that Steelers offense to the point where you were like, should have the Steelers stuck with Justin Fields, because Justin Fields at times was not putting up the huge numbers and not generating a lot of offense, but he was finding a way to win games, and there were sparks at moments where he would have the big game, and you were like, okay, that's maybe what he can be if he keeps building on what he's established. Now, he never got to do that because the team turned Russell Wilson. The rest is history. Well, now Justin Fields is with the Jets. He's kind of taken the reins over from Aaron Rodgers, I guess you can say. Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers, and Justin Fields goes to the Jets. So those teams kind of swapped quarterbacks. It's interesting because, they paid all this money for Aaron Rodgers. And when I say them, I mean the Jets. Now they got Justin Fields, a younger player. They're probably not spending as much money as they did with Aaron Rodgers. They spent all that money on Aaron Rodgers. Now they get a younger guy on a cheaper contract, a guy that they feel like can maybe, because he does have more youth, can maybe pump some energy into this team. Garrett Wilson is there, a guy that is a very promising young wide receiver in the National Football League. Both those players played at Ohio State. So it'll be interesting to see what Justin Fields can do for this Jets team. Can he kind of take over after Aaron Rodgers left and find a way to bring this team closer? I think that's the big thing for this Jets team. We talk about offense, having a potent offense, but really for the Jets, like, you got to establish a culture. You got to have these guys playing for each other. You have to bring everybody in that locker room closer together. So can Justin Fields be a guy that this team rallies around? I look back at with the Steelers, and it seemed like in that first half of the season, they were rallying around Justin Fields. It seemed like at times the Bears were kind of rallying around Justin Fields. I remember DJ Moore didn't want the Bears to get rid of Justin Fields. So he seems to be a guy that is respected by the other players in the locker room. So we'll see if, Aaron Rodgers has all the arm talent in the world. One of the best throwers of the football in NFL history, a pure thrower of the football. Justin Fields is more athletic, less arm talent, but can he be a guy that maybe is a little bit more inspirational when it comes to the guys in the locker room, a guy that the rest of the team can rally around? That's so important for this Jets team, because if they can, with Aaron Glenn, establish this new culture, new head coach, new quarterback, where everybody's buying in at least, and everybody's selling out on every play to the point where they're leaving it all out on the field, that's really going to determine the Jets' fate or not. Because for so long, this team has been a team that just seems like they go through the motions. But if you finally get a Jets team that lays it all out on the field, a team that is motivated, a team that will run through a brick wall for Aaron Glenn, a team that will run through a brick wall for Justin Fields, that's when you'll finally see this Jets team start to turn it around and have some success. It starts and ends with motivation. Everybody in that locker room has to be motivated to go out there and lay it all on the line. Once you see that, we're going to see things start to shift, and I think you'll see guys start having fun again playing for the Jets. Justin Fields will have a shot at that. I think this is his make or break moment. You get cast off by the Bears, you get cast off by the Steelers. Now you're on your third team. You're still a young player. I think he really needs to make the most out of this opportunity. I think he is talented. There's moments where he's taking off and running the football, and he is the most electric player on the field. And you're like, he's got an exciting brand of football to the point where nobody can keep up with this guy. I think the growth for Justin Fields needs to get a little bit better from the arm talent perspective. I think he does have the power to throw the football downfield. I think he can uncork it and let it fly a little bit, but the arm talent needs to get better. The accuracy on the underneath stuff, throwing from different angles, throwing from different spots on the field. If he can get better in the arm talent category, that would go a long way in helping Justin Fields, have success, with his third team in the NFL. It's a pivotal moment for him. He has to capitalize on this opportunity with the Jets. This is the one for Justin Fields. It has to be the moment where he takes the ball and runs with it. I thought he should have been able to finish out the year with the Steelers. I thought Russell Wilson's collapse at the end of the season with the Steelers last year was very telling, that maybe Russell Wilson was actually capitalizing on a little bit of the momentum that Justin Fields brought to the table. If Russell Wilson started week 1 for the Steelers, would they have been, so successful as they were early on with Justin Fields? Because remember, the Steelers started off very strong with Justin Fields. By the end of the year, when Russell Wilson had taken over that team, they were flat. The worst thing you can be in football as a team is flat. That means you lack motivation. There's no emotion being put into the game. It's flat. And like I said, the worst thing you can be as a team is flat. You just look like a deer in the headlights at that point. So we'll see. We'll see if Justin Fields can make the most out of this opportunity with the Jets. It's make or break time for Justin Fields. Moving on, the last story we got on the ticker is the Chiefs story. So the Chiefs got blown out in the Super Bowl by the Eagles. And what's going to happen moving forward for the Chiefs? Now, let's not forget the Chiefs lost to the Buccaneers. They were able to regroup and get back on track and win more Super Bowls. So to me, it's like, can the Chiefs regroup again after this blowout to the Eagles, get back on track and win another Super Bowl or more Super Bowls? And to me, if they've already done it once with the Buccaneers, when they lost to the Buccaneers in that Super Bowl and they regrouped and they got it back on track, then they can do it again after getting blown out by the Eagles. And there's some things we had to talk about on the offensive side of the ball for the Chiefs that kind of stand out to me. One, no Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is a very good football player, a guy that can make some plays for that offense and generate some offense for that Chiefs offense, for Patrick Mahomes and, for Andy Reid, an offensive-minded head coach. They need Rashee Rice. Not having him really hurt. The other thing, Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown missed most of the regular season, did play in the playoff games, but was still finding his footing after that injury. He was not up to speed yet. So having a healthy Hollywood Brown, getting Rashee Rice back, those are two big weapons for the Chiefs offense and for Patrick Mahomes. I think that would go a long way in getting this team back on track, getting both those guys back, Rashee Rice back on the field, and getting Hollywood Brown back to 100%, because clearly he was still trying to get back on track after the injury. It takes time. Now, a bright spot for the Chiefs in that Super Bowl was Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy was really the only Chief that, dominated in that Super Bowl. He was really good in that Super Bowl and really good as a rookie. So I think the future is very bright with Xavier Worthy, a speed guy who has shown that he's very reliable for Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, Andy Reid knows how to use him, a guy that is only going to get better with time based off what we've seen. I don't know how it goes any other way. I think he's going to get better with time. I think the future is very bright for Xavier Worthy. So now, with Rashee Rice coming back, with Hollywood Brown getting back to 100%, you have two speedsters in Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown. It's hard to stop both those two guys from getting over top of your defense. One of those guys is going deep and getting over top the safeties because they're just too fast. There's too much speed there. They're going to turn it into a track meet, and someone's going to get burned. I'm going to tell you that right now. Rashee Rice is just the big play guy that is – he's almost like the number one. Xavier Worthy could really push Rashee Rice and be the number one, especially after how he dominated in that Super Bowl. But, up until getting Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice was kind of looking like the guy that could take over after Travis Kelce retires. I thought Travis Kelce was going to eventually hand the torch to Rashee Rice. Now, Xavier Worthy comes in and provides a spark for this Chiefs offense and kind of is a pleasant surprise for the Chiefs to the point where he could be the number one. But now you have two young, promising talents in Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, where both of those guys are capable of being a number one receiver. I think that's a big opportunity for the Chiefs to get back on track, having both those guys out there. I think Hollywood Brown running the vertical routes will help them put some points on the board. Travis Kelce is, his time's winding down, maybe one or two more seasons, but if he can at least step up during the playoffs, that would be huge for the Chiefs. But, yeah, I think they can regroup and get it back together, especially when you have Andy Reid, the best head coach in the NFL right now that Bill Belichick isn't there anymore. I think with Patrick Mahomes, a guy who is, the only one that might be able to challenge Tom Brady in Super Bowls, having him and Andy Reid and having this core of young players that they now have with Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, that's the path to getting this team back on track. We all know how good the Chiefs defense is with Steve Spagnuolo. So the pieces are there. It's about regrouping, kind of like when they lost to the Buccaneers and Tom Brady in that Super Bowl. They're going to have to regroup, get it back on track, but you can never write off this Chiefs team. I think that's the path for the Chiefs. moving forward. I'm John Kuzma. Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of the Football Game Tonight podcast. You can find us wherever podcasts are found. Also, if you want to be a member of the show, click the link in the episode description box. You can go to our Substack and become a member. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm John Kuzma. I'm signing off.